So, good afternoon and welcome to this webinar. I'm Giorgio Priester, President of Major Cities of Europe. And thank you for joining our today's webinar, which will be about shaping the post-COVID safe tourism with data. May I suggest that all people that are connected switch off their microphone, otherwise we will have a lot of noise. Thank you. So I was saying that this is the webinar we are in is shaping the post-COVID safe tourism with data. This is our webinar number 8 of the series that we have inaugurated after the burst of the pandemic. Please take note that all the handouts, reports, and the video recordings of the previous webinars can be found online. It's open on our website, www.majorcities.eu. And you will find them in the section dedicated to webinars inside the one who are events. Like for the previous webinars, you will have access to the same information for this webinar online in a couple of days. Please note that the webinar is recorded. Please keep your microphones muted. This is important, otherwise it won't be easy to run the conference, the web conference, and also the webcams. If you don't need them, it would be nice if you switch off the webcams. You can talk anyway, so that we don't consume too much bandwidth. You can use the chat to ask your questions and to comment. Please do it, don't hesitate. And you are also welcome to intervene in person during the debate at the end. And if so, please just unmute your microphone and raise your hand, and you will have access to the discussion. And now I switch to the beginning of the session. I'm pleased to introduce our speakers. From Tourism Northern Ireland, we will have Dave Vincent, Chief Digital Officer. From the Florence municipality, Gianluca Vannuccini, Manager of IT Infrastructure Development, together with Emanuele Geri, responsible for Data Office, and Fabio Pazzaglia, Data Engineer. Be sure they will finish in 20 minutes anyway. They promised that. And then finally, last but not least, the Austrian National Tourist Office, Reinhard Lenner, Chief Digital Officer. I hope you will enjoy this webinar, and please don't hesitate, ask questions on the chat or do it at the end when we have the debate. Each speaker will have more or less 20 minutes, and then we will have half an hour debate. I hope we will have enough time to have a good discussion. So Dave, the floor is yours. You can start.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, and many thanks for your time this afternoon. I'm a true Irishman, so I'm going to try and tell you a story, but I'm going to do that hopefully with a slightly toned down and slower voice than I normally do. I'm hoping that you can all see this screen when I put it on to full screen. Is everybody seeing my slides okay?
Yes, just put
okay.
Yes, they're okay.
Perfect.
They're okay. Yes. Full screen, please.
It's coming that way now. Okay. So I'm going to tell you a story today and really talk about Northern Ireland as a region and our tourism product and what we've been doing pre-pandemic and in response to the pandemic. I like to start this presentation normally saying enabled. Digital is not the answer to everything. But it is about helping the business deliver the outcomes and the response they need. So digital becoming very much a very important tool for the industry and for my organization. But let me share that as we go through the sector. And just really to set in context, I guess, pre-COVID world in Northern Ireland. And one of the great pleasures of being on events like this is hearing about other regions and other cities. But in the past kind of 10 years, Northern Ireland has grown out of probably the history that each one of you knows in different ways and will have seen on the press, but significant capital investment in landscape events, landscape attractions that has driven significant business and international tourism numbers, but focused on a small number of larger things rather than the industry. We have something like 5,500 tourism businesses in Northern Ireland today. Pre-pandemic, we had just broken through the £1 billion turnover revenue target, which has been slowly developing over the past number of years. About 5 million overnight trips, equating to about 16 million bed nights, and something like 70,000 people employed across the region in tourism and hospitality businesses. So all going very well, but again, the focus had been on a small number of larger things rather than that wider industry base. And really my job over the last 3.5 years has been to help develop the capability across the wider sector, really looking at improving the productivity of the businesses, improving the experience when people get there, but also, and importantly, you'll see this at the end, developing the resilience and actually just back to day-to-day usage of whether that be profitability, bookkeeping, or developing content, all of the aspects of tourism that we need to get people here, but also to run a business. We also had a priority around innovation and developing thought leadership around immersive technology, around data, and I'll talk a little bit about that, just one slide, and then I'll talk about our approach to data and what we've been doing there, the pros and cons pre and post-pandemic. So really a fairly ambitious plan, a small team, a budget that is provided in year, so a small budget from central government to run an IT function for an organisation, and we bid in year for additional budget to allow us to develop projects. So in terms of digitally reimagining experiences, we focused initially on immersive tech, and I'm not going to talk you through each of those, but really working importantly, a partnership between academia, private sector, tourism businesses and public sector to explore the opportunity that immersive technology brings us to tell stories in a different way, to expose stories that haven't been told before, all the way through to providing visitor information in a different way. So everything on the very bottom right of that screen in terms of bringing Titanic back onto the slipways, to playing games with C.S. Lewis and the Narnia stories, to telling the story of Belfast and the civil rights history in a different way, in a non and apolitical way, right the way through to wayfinding for our visitors and helping them find their way around the city. Lots of lessons learned along the way there, everything from making sure that those little green arrows in the top right aren't down on the footpath and are raised above the ground so that people aren't looking down and not walking out in front of the bus that they're trying to catch. So lots of lessons, very practical lessons learned along the way.
Dave, slow down a little bit your English, please.
Okay. I'm just conscious of 20 minutes, George, and lots to say, so I'll try
don't worry. I will be very very open to for 2 more minutes. Okay.
I'm also very aware that speakers coming after me will talk about their tourism data hubs, and I'm not going to talk about this from a tourism perspective. I'm not even going to talk too much about the hub, but this is our data strategy on a page, which is really about trying to identify available data sources, create new data sources, to aggregate those together in a way that allows us to develop insights that support decision making or the development of new processes or policy or spending decisions. I guess the key lesson off this page has been that everybody assumes that as a national tourism authority we will have lots of data. That's not quite the case. We have lots of information. We don't really have data about visitors. I can tell you lots of things about visitors' propensity to visit Northern Ireland and their response to marketing campaigns, but when they arrive in Northern Ireland or on the island of Ireland, I talk about them falling off a cliff. My industry at that stage then knows more about my visitor and what they're doing and what their preferences are than I do at the centre. As a public sector agency, we also use statutory reporting. So the statistics that I talked about at the start in terms of the £1 billion, the 5 million visitors, are based upon surveys done at points of entry, and they're samples. And they are available to me normally 18 months after the season. So of no use or very limited use to allow me to make any real decisions in real time and respond to situations in any kind of near time capability. So this hub is all about trying to aggregate all of that to create our own, and in many ways leading the marketplace on the island of Ireland around IoT, around data analytics. Lots of technology companies, but very few technology companies who had grabbed the commercial aspect or the commercial prospect of tourism and putting a data infrastructure in place. So in many circumstances, we're having to go and find the technology, roll it out, test it, go through all of the challenges in terms of getting stuff rolled out, GDPR, all of those legislative challenges before we get to the data to allow us to make the decisions and start doing the insights on the right-hand side of that equation. But it's been a long journey. We're starting to get there. We've everything from footfall data through to spending data, through to actual real-time experience data, and starting to drive real interest in our industry and people looking in there to inform their decision-making, their campaign making, and where they go from there. So I'm not going to talk too much more about that because I want to talk about our response to the pandemic. Very easy right now, 3 years into our journey, to sit on our laurels a bit and talk about the fantastic projects, innovation that we've got. And back in early 2018, we were picked up by the UK government and called out as something called a public sector entrepreneur. I love the term. I don't believe that's me, but actually somebody who thinks differently, who gets things moving fast and doesn't let process or systems get in the way of their ambition. And that this is something that's on my wall in the office, which is all about continuing that ethos and those values of a digital innovation team. But yeah, let's roll forward to kind of April, February, March time, 2020, and think about what was happening there. Very clear that the world of tourism and our visitors and opinion is changing. Lots of press globally about people wanting to have a better idea of their impact on the country or the ecology of a country, not wanting to travel as much, wanting to understand about local economic impact, and a real building mass of changing opinion that we needed to respond to and be able to respond to quickly. I talked about us being successful, and all of a sudden back at home, our hotspots were busier than they had ever been, to the point where people's experience when they arrived on the ground didn't live up to what the online experience promised. So a real challenge for us in terms of trying to move people about, develop new experiences to get them to move around, and manage the expectations of what somebody would experience when they arrived on the ground. Then layer on top of that little bug that we all call COVID-19, and the world changed completely. My organization to pivot like a public sector organization is not very good at, and think about actually why we existed. And I talked about on the very first day when we had to send people home and when we closed down the economy here in Northern Ireland, there had never been a more important time for us to be able to respond and lead our industry. And how do we do that? With data and with insights. So a couple of immediate responses that we have implemented that have helped our policy and decision making, and if I have your permission, I'll show you those and then talk a little bit tourism recovery plan that I have been leading. Why is a Chief Digital Officer leading a tourism recovery plan? Because of two things: a digital mindset and an agile approach, breaking things into small chunks and doing them much quicker than we've ever done them before, and not in true public sector style, thinking about the long-term solution, but moving fast and fixing things, if you remember back to the recognition we got at the start. So our initial action was to think about how do we engage with our industry to understand the real impact of the pandemic on the industry. Very easy for public servants sitting in an office to make decisions and policies based on their understanding of an industry. And at the same time, we have an industry of 5,500 people all wanting to have their own say on who is more important and who should get more support from government. So we launched very quickly in an agile manner and at an industry engagement platform, which allowed our industry to, number one, for me to communicate with them and tell them what I was doing, to talk about our priorities, and to allow them to subscribe to updates, but also to respond to surveys and to respond to consultation. Not consultation in the traditional public sector way, in a much smaller, shorter, sharper way, but capturing that in a consistent manner across all of our subsectors that then helped me use that to create a tourism recovery steering group and a working group that would work through the process of creating recommendations to government for industry support. That was the first one. The second one was actually around modeling the economic impact in real time of the pandemic in a moving environment. And I know we're all the same, all regions and cities are the same, and trying to understand the different scenarios under which we are operating, whether the market is closed, whether we're engaging in social distancing, or whether restrictions are lessened in some areas or not. What we did was to model three scenarios, a best case, a worst case, and somewhere in the middle. Sad to say, scenario 3, which is what you're seeing on screen and is live on my Tourism Hub today, is worst case. Talking about something like a nearly 50% downturn in the economic impact in the Northern Ireland economy. And at risk jobs of about 31,000 jobs at risk over the coming months if we don't see an upturn in demand or a change in the situation with the vaccine. And all of that news that is coming is great. But the ability to model, to change the scenarios at the top, so I'm not sure if you're seeing my mouse moving, but the scenarios at the top allow me to change the phasing of restrictions, the phasing of social distancing, and allow that to impact the economic model and allow us to make some very real decisions. In there are global indicators, very local indicators, some sanitary indicators in terms of consultancy reports, but also some very local stuff that we've captured as part of the data hub as well. But that was at a macro level and an economic level. It was very clear we needed to understand at a subsectoral level the impact of the economy and how we started to model that and how we used that information then to impact the policies and decision making and the funding and support we want to do that. Hands up, the biggest challenge of all of this is getting the data from the subsectors to allow us to do the modeling. And one of the things the pandemic has done for us is to open the eyes of my industry to see the value of sharing data and information with me that they would have deemed maybe commercially sensitive in the past and not wanted us to really share. But right now what you're seeing is a subsector vulnerability index, which tracks the behavior and the impact on subsectors by month compared to the previous month and compared to at the start of the pandemic, and a statistical model that allows us to make some decisions, but based on only 3 or 4 indicators of KPIs and performance information that we can pick up readily and easily from each of the subsectors. So that was that. And that's the modelling that has then informed the definition of our tourism recovery plan, which is where I engage with our ministers and our executive to bid for funding and to develop support programs and funding that we are rolling out to our industry. Right now, we're still in survival mode, trying very hard to get into recovery. But the reality is, given the nature of the marketplace and the shutdown of the economy, we're still in survival and very much about getting money out to these organizations to help them survive and be there for when demand comes back, because we know it will, and all of the indicators say that we will. The tourism recovery plan has 7 themes. Again, nothing surprising here. All of them data-driven in terms of why we've picked them, whether we have enough information to drive programs out of them, and whether we have enough information to allow us to define the level of support that we want to put in there. But bids in there up to about 50 or 60 million sterling in terms of support in the next 4 months to the end of this financial year, right across everything from making sure that we have certification programs in place for our premises and how we manage that and onboard that, through to stimulating demand through the launch of a marketing voucher for all citizens. So every household in Northern Ireland next week, on the back of a 3-week agile development, will get the opportunity to register for a £50 voucher off all accommodation or a £20 voucher off attractions in the next 4 months. So trying to stimulate demand and using data and using the data we've already built and digital technology to allow us to do that. Business survival is about getting grants out and making sure that we look at rates, we look at VAT, and we look at all of the government interventions there that can minimise the impact and reduce the cost on our businesses. Connectivity is for us as an island all about supporting our airlines and on our ports to make sure that people can get in there. And then the next 2 are about capability and competitiveness of the business. For me, that's all about technology and using technology better to understand my business better, to be able to respond better, everything from financial planning through to ongoing development of my IT systems or developing new experiences, and then how we surface that at a regional level. And the last one for public sector is making sure we have a creative and supportive and flexible policy environment to allow us to do all of that. So that's the recovery plan, driven by data through all of the phases that I've talked about. And I guess I just wanted to revisit, right back at the start, I talked about my digital priorities that we started 3.5 years ago. Right now, 4 years in, 3.5, 4 years in, there's nothing terribly different, but they've developed slightly. We have a regional approach to our visitor information and how we focus on them. What that means for me right now is I've just developed a new website for Discover Northern Ireland that actually talks to the visitor about all of our 11 council or local regional tourism offerings as well on the same platform with the same database and the same customer experience. Today, prior to now, that would have been 15, 20 different websites all pitching for the same customer. Right now, we're doing it together under one brand, this Embrace a Giant Spirit logo that you'll see on the top and side. I've alluded to the fact we're working in partnership with industry and really dependent upon them to help us provide me with the data that I don't have. I'll continue to experiment to create new sources of data, but the real-time data comes from the industry themselves. So working with them and developing a self-service business hub for them that allows them to log in, log their data with me, and in return consume services, training, apply for grants, and talk to mentors online through our websites. As an organization, we stopped talking about digital, and I refuse to talk about digital in my operating plan. It's about business outcomes and making sure that digital supports that. It's about developing resilience as an organization and developing resilience within my own my industry and across it. And it's about developing digital capability and mindset in my own business, but across the industry, becoming much more industry facing. We're in a complete change as an organization where my staff will have a portfolio of clients that they will engage with and develop relationships with. So it becomes a two-way relationship as opposed to somebody coming to a public sector organization and asking for help. We will be wanting to develop a relationship with them, understand where they are in the journey, and to encourage them to work with us and to progress with them. And the last three I talked about previously: an agile mindset, breaking things down, challenging the way that we've done things in the past, developing data literacy in terms of not just looking at the reports we've always learned and looked at, but thinking about data in a different way and asking the data different questions. And what is it telling us, rather than looking at it in the same way every time. And all of that driving decision-making that is based 100% on data. There's always qualitative information as well, but we must have data to inform that decision-making. And the Tourism Data Hub and all of those models that I've shown on the journey help me to build that capability that will allow me to serve my own organization and to make that an organization that's fit for purpose to serve my industry and help us recover from the pandemic. So thank you very much for your time. I look forward to hopefully having some discussion and answering your questions later.
Thank you, Dave. Excellent. Could you, could you, it's okay. So thank you very much. Very interesting. I'm sure there will be questions afterwards. For the meanwhile, I haven't got any, but please don't hesitate to ask questions. I think there is a lot behind what you presented, which would be very interesting to investigate. Thank you so much. So now it's we come back to my country, to Italy. Florence, Gianluca, the floor is yours now. Remember,
okay, good afternoon. Okay.
Remember your promise.
Sure. Do you see the screen?
Yes, we do.
Great. So good afternoon, everybody, and to the old friends, many friends that are in this workshop. Florence, smart tourism and big data and COVID. So I'm Gianluca Vannuccini in the IT department of Florence. Together with me, there are Emanuele and Fabio that are working with me on the data field. And what I would like to show you this afternoon is how we approach data governance in the city, how we are implementing our big data platform, and how smart tourism and smart services are leveraging this big data platform also during COVID-19. So our roadmap started some years ago by doing an assessment of all initiatives done by the many public utilities in the city and by the municipality. And we started in 2016 an yearly action plan called Firenze Digitale, in which we are working every day, daily, with public utilities and other stakeholders in order to exchange data and to promote data sharing and open data. Where is it landing? This is landing to the Smart City Control Room concept. So in 2021, we will launch our Smart City Control Room, and we are working at this project since some years. And thanks mainly to the Replicate project, that's the Horizon 2020 project that allowed us to assess a Smart City plan, a Smart Florence plan, and then to implement several Smart City initiatives in the city, based on the infrastructure of the city in terms of connectivity and open data. And together with Bristol and San Sebastian, we developed different initiatives, mainly the big data platform, which will be used within the Smart City Control Room, and which Emanuele will detail afterwards. So the idea is to build a place where different public utilities, operators belonging to the different public utilities, will manage the public services in Florence. So they will manage daily issues and also issues related, for example, to presence of people into the streets, traffic sensor, and traffic optimization. And of course, this can be useful even in emergency situation and for resilience. So this smart city control room will be directly linked with the civil protection and the emergency control room. So this is what we are working on, and this will be launched in the first half of 2021. And this system, this infrastructure, this operational model is based on the big data platform that we have developed within these years. So we are working to the control room from three areas. So the hardware, the physical part. So we are building rooms, the quarters for the smart city control room. We are working at the governance level. So we are modifying all the contracts with the public utilities in order to organize and to formalize their presence within the control room. And we will start by also watching at what colleagues from Barcelona did. We were visiting that control room. We will start with a continuous process improvement. So we will start and we will gradually switch on more processes that will be managed within this control room. So the basis is on data and on big data that are collecting data from all the city. We started analyzing touring data in 2016 by analyzing data from mobile operators. We discovered a lot of interesting insights. We discovered that in 1 year in Florence, almost 20 million people were coming each year. Of course, it was another era, pre-COVID, of course. And 170 different nationalities were coming in Florence. So it was really, really incredible data and insights. And this gave start to an analysis of data of people presence in Florence that brought us to this platform. This is the Smart Tourist platform that we launched this July. And it is a website and a mobile app platform that behind has a system that collects data on big data and propose to the city user different experiences and paths away from overcrowded places before COVID or social distance safe within COVID emergency. So this is the mobile app that we launched in July that is going to be improved every day and every while. And the idea is to collect data from the different sensors on the city, mainly the Wi-Fi network. Fabio will explain this afterwards. Applying to this data machine learning and prediction analytics, and then proposing to the end user that can be a tourist but also a resident the best way to experience the city and to try new experiences in places that are not crowded and during this emergency that are COVID safe, let's say, more COVID safe. Okay, I will pass the floor to Emanuele. Emanuele, are you able to connect? I will switch off my audio and we continue to do the presentation. Okay, Emanuele, are you there?
I try to see.
Okay, he's not there, so I will continue myself. So data in Smart Florence. So what we are doing is to leverage the big data and open data that we have and GIS in order to develop a big data platform for collecting and integrating this data set. So one of the most important projects is this big data platform that we are building within the Tuscany region public cloud, and on top of which we are doing sentiment analysis and analysis on people presences within the city. This is the model of this big data platform that it is scaling up the experience that we did in the Replicate Horizon 2020 project, which is composed of different modules, data lake, ingestion capabilities, and API, and sentiment analysis. And this platform is developing, is collecting a lot of data. Currently, we are building this dashboard on top of the experience done by the University of Florence within the Replicate project. And so what comes out? It comes out dashboard for decision makers, for the mayor, for the city manager, for operators of the smart city control room. And now also data related to COVID emergency. So people presence in the streets, in the squares, in the parks, in the gardens, and also the values of infected people in the city that can be useful data for the mayor. So these are some examples of the data sources that are being integrated, that are integrated within this platform, and which is providing real-time data on the city. Fabio, are you there? Okay. We have some problems of connection. Fabio, are you there? Okay, I will try to do my best to tell you.
Well, we are sure you are excellent.
Okay. So what we are doing, we are collecting data mostly from the Wi-Fi network. So the idea is to use the Wi-Fi network as a basis for sensing people presence into the streets. The next step is to use video surveillance network. So what we are working now with our offices managing video surveillance is to analyze the possibility to do video analytics to collect data of people presence in the streets through the video surveillance networks. We have more than 1,000 video cameras in the city, which could give us a lot of insights and interesting data in order to analyze how people are moving in the street. Then we already have traffic sensor networks based on video analytics, and we are using the Wi-Fi network. So we have something like 800 Wi-Fi hotspots into public squares that are being used to analyze how many people are connected to each Wi-Fi hotspot. We are collecting all anonymous data, only numbers, only real-time numbers on each access point. And the idea is to collect all this data to analyze the presence in some squares. So we are starting to develop the most insignificant spots of the city, and to analyze how is the trend of people presence within these spots. Of course, this is not the best period to do this exercise. We have, of course, something like a lockdown in this moment. So, but it is even now it is very useful to check, for example, some places where in the Sunday, for example, a lot of crowds are collected, and maybe this can be useful to the mayor to send policemen to suggest people to implement social distancing. The idea is this is not a straightforward task, because we have to correlate data from different data sources, not only the Wi-Fi. For example, we are also exploiting other data sets and analyzing other data sets, and in order to predict what can be the crowding. For example, events. We are integrating this with georeferenced events in the city in order to predict what can happen. For example, if there is a market in a park, we can predict if that Sunday can be a crowded moment. And for example, with COVID, we at the beginning we were offered by several mobile operators to use their data for free. All the cities in Italy were offered by these mobile operators, and we used this data to analyze, for example, also the movement of people within the different neighborhood of the city, and to check the drop down of the presences in the city during the different lockdowns. After this, we started analyzing data from the Wi-Fi network. And as I said before, this was very useful. For example, this is the effect of a sunny Sunday in the park. So this is the improvement of people in the park with respect to the previous week that was not sunny. And this gave the insight to the decision maker, to the mayor, to close that park in that moment. So this was very useful also to check how much people were complying with the social distancing. Okay, I see that Fabio says that his mic is muted. Giorgio, can you unmute Fabio if it's possible?
Let me find him.
Him.
We have 27 people, so let me see. Fabio, where is Fabio?
I can unshare my.
He was connected before, but I don't see him now.
Okay.
Fabio, here he is. Yeah, he's unmuted. He can speak.
Fabio?
No, he's still muted. Fabio, you can talk. Fabio, can you hear us? He's unmuted. I can see him.
Okay. So maybe we can stop here and wait if he's able to connect. Okay.
So you would like to come back to him after we have the next speaker? What?
Yeah. Okay. Let's try. Okay.
Okay. You have the right to 7 more minutes, so you can use it afterwards.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. So I see that the chat is quite active. People exchanging LinkedIn and also comments, which is fine. So next speaker, Reynard, the floor is yours now. Let me see if you can see yet the mountains on your back. Can you?
I think they have gone.
They have gone. It's a pity. Okay, Reynard, please, you can start.
Just try to find the presentation. We had it before. Okay, you can see it. Wonderful.
Yeah. Perfect.
So thanks for having me. My name is Reinhard. I'm at the CDO at the Austrian National Tourism Organization. And many thanks to Isabella, who is here in the audience. She's the lady and the expert who got me in here. The Austrian National Tourism Organization was founded in 1955. Austria, as you know, is a very big country, and that's why we have 2,000 tourism organizations in our country. And that makes it a little bit difficult for the National Tourism Organization, because in our country, tourism is part of the federal governments. So each province has its own tourism law. We have 9 provinces, we have 9 tourism laws, and we have about 1,500 tourism organizations. That is very good if you think about how to engage with people, how to engage with each other. But as we're moving forward, and if we are moving into a digital surrounding, into a digital environment, that's very tricky, and it's quite a challenge to get all these people under one umbrella. You don't really find the people which are mostly marketing people, and they do excellent jobs in marketing and in advertising, but they do not really have the skills and the expertise and the resources which will be needed today and tomorrow. So the Austrian National Tourist Office, who was always a marketing agency, is changing now a little bit. We are changing also into an innovation platform for the Austrian tourism industry. So from next year on, we will have about 20-25% of the total resources, which means budget, but also people, investing into innovation. And that means 3 things. It is innovation in terms of technology, but also social innovations. And we have three pillars which we are based on. One is qualification. We try to find some ideas how to bring the new skills into the tourism industry. But we also think about how can we widen the people, the audience we talk to. How can we think in an ecosystem? How can we bring in the tech companies, the startups? and how can we develop future services and programs. That is what I will focus within a couple of minutes. The second pillar after qualification is experimentation. Experimentation, so not only writing big strategies and having many papers from a scientific point of view, but also going into prototyping, into sprints. And the Austrian Experience Data Hub is one of these proof of concepts, and I will show you a few more details soon. And the third pillar after qualification and about experimentation is the topic of transformation. We do know that the experience economy is changing again. The last 20 years, experience economy is based on having fun, going to Disney parks, and so on. So being and creating great stages was the most important things for tourism destinations. And the next thing, the transformation economy, will not only be about staging exciting things, but it's also about guiding people. In future, many people don't care so much where they go to, but it's more a journey inside themselves. And we as tourism destinations, we help them, we guide them with our natures, with our coaches, with our guides to discover more of themselves. That's about us. And now let's have a quick look at the Austrian Experience Data Hub. It's a proof of concept about working data-based, increasing regional added value through the use of technology. And I liked it a lot what the speaker said before. It's not, Dave, I think it was Dave, it's not about the technology. The technology is something which helps us to create new experiences. It's about silent technology. So that's what we are facing at the moment. We have many family-run, many mom-and-pop companies, wellness trainers. We have some small restaurants. The average number of people working in all these companies is about 3, 4, 5, 6 people. We have cafe houses. We have hotels, which are very hospital, but very, very small boutique hotels. We have apartments. We have events. And what we lack a little bit of is context. The last couple of years in tourism industry, there was a lot about storytelling, social influence, and a lot about content. But from my point of view, it's also about context. It is not, you have to combine different data sets because you need different informations in the morning than what you need in the evening. You need different information if the sun is shining or whatever. And we also need some ideas about public transport, about congestion somewhere on the roads or whatever. So that's the problem at the moment. We have many data silos, independent data silos, which brings the situation for our visitors that it is very, very complex. What can we do in a certain destination? The information is very static, yeah? If we think about websites, we always talk about digitization, and in tourism industry, we think digitization is having a good website. But if we are very critical, a website in many cases is nothing else than a brochure which is put on the internet. So that's not digitization, that's maximal electrification. The benefit of digitization is combining different things. The benefit is dialogue and not the static brochures, website, what we know. And the second thing is that destination management, similar what Dave said, the management companies, the organizations, they don't really know a lot. They know a lot about the communication part of it because we analyze our websites, we analyze our newsletter tools, but as soon as the people arrive, maybe some local companies know a little bit, but the overlook and the overview about all the visitor behavior, the people behavior, we don't have that. And I think management in that case is also not the right word for that. So our thought was, create a kind of Austria Xperia data management, create an Austria data hub. And that means the first thing, connect data from different sources, similar what we saw before in Firenze or in Ireland. And what we learned is that the data quality is not that good as it should be. The data quality and working on data quality is one of the most difficult things and takes most of the resources. So combining touristic data sources, public data sources, and also combining private bloggers who sometimes are extremely skilled and experienced in certain areas. Like in Austria, we have one which is called Die Frühstückerinnen. They have a blog where the best places for breakfast are there. And somebody else has 1,000 things to do in Vienna. And something else has the A-list, the best lifestyle product. But they are all sometimes seen as competitors to tourism organizations. We try to invite them and think in an ecosystem, think in a network, and see them as a partner. If we have that many different stakeholders, we have to define standards and we have to assure the quality, as I said before. And the third thing we do is we don't really focus on making the system better. That's one thing which is important, but we are really focusing and we are really trying to innovate. And therefore, getting startups together, innovation companies, to come up with new business model. So not only to use synergies, but really come up with new innovative products. That's the job of the startups, the developers, the web agencies, and so on and so on. And on the other hand, if we all have all this data, we can monitor them better. We get some data for management and for the control and so on and so on. All the things which are said before. What we did is we introduced that for a very long time to all the tourism organizations, and it was very, very frustrating for me because nobody of my marketing, of the marketing experts, and many of them are really my friends, did really understand what we are talking here. So we started a use case ourselves as the Austrian National Tourism Organization, came together with a startup, and that's the data hub in a proof of concept status. And we developed a concierge service which uses the context. We developed the concierge service for Vienna. It's called Make My Day Vienna. And the foundation and the pillar of this application is the Austria Experience Data Hub. We presented this. We worked on that for 6 months. We presented it to the tourism industry. We presented it to startups, and we learned a lot about the different needs and about the different companies. What we want to be is a one-stop shop for application developers. Not only the data sources, but also the services some startups offer, and that they, whatever code they have, they can get the data to develop something new, but they also can use it as a distribution channel for new services which are created and which are for an easy to use for others, depending on which coding language they are doing. And yeah, that's a screenshot of Make My Day Vienna. I can give you a kind of link. At the moment, all of that is a proof of concept. It works, and we hope that we are getting public funding, that we can set up this into a real project and continue with the innovation process for the next couple of years. In terms of COVID, we focusing on two things. We focus on information via dashboards, and we have a great market research and data science team in the Austrian National Tourism Organization. So some of them are not tourism marketers or whatever. They are physicists. They are studied chaos theory and. And like here, that is a dashboard which is free, available for everybody. Here you can see how the international airlines, how the flight history is. So every day we know which plane on which airport on the Earth is moving, and we could also tell people how many people sit on each plane, because we want to get a feeling, when does tourism and the journey start again, and how long does it take that it also will start again in Europe. That's a very helpful tool for international tourism. A second thing is we try to find out about the bookings. How are the bookings doing? And as you see at the moment, bookings are down completely. And that also has something to do with political decisions and all the lockdowns and so on and so on. And as you see down here, there are different tables, different information, which we provide to our small and medium-sized enterprises, that they can make better decisions. And it's not only about technology. We introduced yesterday a kind of storybook, which is called Hausbankerl. That's something, when you are in Austria, you find in many, many hotels and houses, a little bench in front of the house where people sit and where they finish their day, think about what happened, think and dream about tomorrow. And this cozy atmosphere, how can you deliver that into these digital tools, MS Teams and Google Hangout and Zoom, not only in a business-like environment, but also in a leisure time environment. So we talk to camera people, to tech people, to sound people, to storybook writers, and we created a kind of storybook which is can be used by the whole industry, every small and family-run cozy hotel. So that's how we react to the COVID situation. And thanks a lot for listening to me. And I'm looking forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Reinhard. Thank you so much. Can you stop sharing your presentation? By the way, the picture is very nice, but okay, fine. Thank you so much. Could you? I think you could, if you could switch off your microphones, and then you take over when there are questions. Okay. So I haven't seen many. I have seen a lot of discussions between you. Not really questions. I have some, but I would like to ask before to Martin, who has been very active in the chat, if he wants to raise some points that he feels interesting. If you want, otherwise I go to my questions, or anybody else who can take the microphone and start asking questions.
Yes, hello Giorgio, hello everybody.
Hi Martin.
I think I'm trying to get sorted here.
Yeah, you are. We can see your name. Yes.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So yeah, I had a couple of questions for Dave, which is given an initial answer to in the chat. So thank you, Dave, and thanks for your presentation and the others. So particularly interested in the tie-up with the university sector and the skills and capabilities you've been able to access through that collaboration, and also kind of reflections really. The point you made about not having much in the way of data about visitors once they arrived in Northern Ireland, and whether the kind of approach that Florence has adopted might have potential in the Northern Ireland context.
Okay, I'll try and address those in some sort of chronology. Martin, apologies if I go off script. I guess the first one is we have a well-established and fairly well-renowned academic centre in Northern Ireland for emerging technology, who are very keen to engage with our industry and crying out for opportunities to be much more practical, and have a number of outreach programs which we have leveraged. So through a number of the business schools and the technology schools, we've done a little bit like Reinhard has talked about in terms of developing use cases and telling them what we think the art of the possible is, and throwing out challenge opportunities. I guess the key vehicle for us has been the SBRI program in the UK, which is Small Business Research Initiative, which allows us to fund small innovation projects, 100% fund for private sector tech companies, as long as they work with academia and with council providers and with tourism providers. So that has been a little bit of networking and the usual, understanding their priorities and how they map to us, a little bit of funding of our own and a little bit of funding from them. I guess the key benefit to me right now is about the access to resource. So as a public sector organization, I can't pay the salaries that would attract a data scientist or a data analyst. And right now, people probably don't think tourism is that an attractive place to be doing that kind of work. So access to those kind of students is really beneficial for me, but actually it's equally as beneficial to them because they get to do PhD research project work on live and real data. And a bit like Reinhard talked about in terms of the startups and that community, allowing the academic community to develop use cases on the back of that. So that's the academic piece, and happy to talk about that at length. The answer is some really strong advocates on their side and a willingness and openness on our side to work together. From a technology perspective and from a tracking in the city and what Gianluca said and what Reinhard has said, IoT, Wi-Fi information, sensors is definitely a huge part of the answer. Telephony data is a big part of the answer, and Wi-Fi data is a big part of the answer. Telephony data or any of those kind of aggregated data sets which are commercially available are almost prohibitive, Martin, to be honest, in terms of six-figure numbers to get demographic data. As a single body, we find that quite difficult. So we've got some interim funding. We're testing it and trying to build a bigger business case. We're using all of those business cases and proof of concepts to break down some of the barriers of perception. So I have local councils here in Northern Ireland who will capture lots of Wi-Fi data about our citizens and where they move and how they move around the city. And because of GDPR or worries over data protection, we'll delete the data every 3 months. And I pull out whatever hair I've left, and they've thrown away the gold dust, you know. So trying to work with them to break down those barriers, to get them to understand. The only way to do that sometimes is actually to show them the art of the possible and to break that down. So our approach has been very small proof of concepts. The third leg of that stool is I'm hugely frustrated as a technologist. I'm not a public sector person. I'm seconded into the public sector. But my sector hasn't grasped the commercial opportunity for IoT and data creation. We have grasped the opportunity for mining it, developing insights and building huge engines and machine learning and artificial intelligence. But there are very few companies or commercial offerings that will help a government or a public sector organization generate the data that it needs to feed those machines. So lots of different fronts to that. I'm hoping I answer your questions. I've probably missed something, Martin, but happy to pick up going forward if there's anything specific in there.
Maybe if I may suggest, I would ask the authorization to the three speakers to exchange the email so that I send them to everybody. So afterwards you have the opportunity to share and discuss later on. But let's continue now. Now, we owe to Gianluca 7 minutes of presentation that he missed. So we go back to Gianluca now, and then we go back to questions. Start thinking about your questions. We have time. Gianluca, the floor is yours again.
Yeah, okay. I will try to share my desktop to show you some real-time data. So this is the dashboard built on Wi-Fi data. So we have the most important squares of the city, and this is the level 1, 2, 3. So the level of crowding in this, which is monitored. Of course, we have a flat situation now. But for example, in Piazza Signoria, you can see the difference and the effect of the daily activities and so on. Most interesting is the traffic monitoring, which is giving real-time data. This is on the dashboard built by the University of Florence within the Replicate project. So these are the data coming from the traffic sensors of the city, and they are telling us how many vehicles are entering or are flowing in and out of the city, and also crossing the gates of the limited traffic zone, and with the trends and with the benchmark with the previous week or the previous month. So this data can be useful also to check how many vehicles are on the street and what's going on in the streets. Lastly, I just wanted to show you some, let me check this. Some slides regarding the city presences on Wi-Fi. So do you see it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the map of the most relevant Wi-Fi spots, and this is the monitoring. We had something like 1 million daily users across all the 2020, and with the most important crowded places of the city. And this, of course, gave us some numbers regarding. Of course, they are not meaningful in the absolute sense. They are all meaningful as trends, because the Wi-Fi network, as the colleagues were saying before, can be must be analyzed as they are. So they are not precise data, for example, such as video analytics, because there we would have much more precise data. But here they can be useful nevertheless as a trend. So to tell us the trend, so we watch at the percentage, not at the absolute numbers. Or, for example, the distribution across the months and the variation. So here we see the effect of the lockdown in March, April. And also to make the best and the worst squares of the city. So we were able to make these rankings of the city. So how what were this was curious, because during lockdown or during the summer, they gave us a sense of which were the places where people were meeting in the rebirth, no? So the reopen of the city during the reopening phase of the city. And this could be also useful when crossed with commercial activities, so shops and the commercial centers to check what are the places where people stay. So again, some numbers of the places where people were going, and some places were heavily affected by the COVID and by the lockdown, and other places. So we had also average total ground numbers, so 90% present during hard lockdown in some places, and of course they are all minus numbers as natural given the period. Okay, that's all I was wanting to share with you.
Thank you, Gianluca. Thank you. Can you please unshare your screen? Yes, that's fine. Thank you. So. Any other question? Please unmute your microphone if you have some. Otherwise, I will take the opportunity to have some questions. Any more? No. Then I go. First of all, I've been quite impressed about those presentations. They are, of course, excellent and very inspiring. At the same time, of course, they are different. A lot of it was about collecting data and analyzing them and finding ways to take decisions out of it. Some of the other data, like in Florence, was about really showing minute by minute what is happening in the city. But I'm sure there is also something about how planning and take decisions. Now, what I have in mind is that in reality, managing tourism is a business, is a big business, a very big business, but at the same time, it's not a product. I mean, yes, it is a product, but if you build something, you can sell it. You can say how much is the revenue, how much is the profit, etc. How can you build the business case on which you make such investments, which are not trivial, the ones you are doing in Austria, in Northern Ireland, and in Florence, to build these data hubs, this intelligence system, and at the same time, are your politicians really trusting the data in taking decisions, or is it still a little bit taken on sentiments rather than on data? What can you say something about it? Maybe Dave.
Okay, I guess I'm happy not to do all the talking, Giorgio, but yes, I agree with you. In very simple terms, in Northern Ireland, our metrics are around visitor numbers and economic impact. But today, we're moving towards something which we're talking about as regenerative tourism, which is not just regional impact, but at a local level, the impact on the local economy and the economic impact and the ecological impact that a visitor has on a very specific locality. I need data to understand that and to be able to set some targets and performance metrics and to be able to measure performance against that. I guess those are evolving, and they're the only metrics I really have to drive the investment, given that tourism, and I get it, it's not a product. For us, we talk about tourism as an ecosystem. So it's the supply chain, it's all of the sub-providers and all of the bits from transport through to the experience and accommodation and food itself. But the only common impact we have is the financial one. So that's the first piece. The second one is around political ownership of those metrics and understanding. I think COVID has forced, certainly in Northern Ireland, our political masters to look to data to inform their decisions, because otherwise it was seen as politically driven decision making for gain, on their own personal gain. Our challenge is there are so many different data models, and every consultancy house and economic house has a different perspective on what the economic model looks like. And it's about trying to find those standards when you don't have a baseline. And I guess that's why the Data Hub work has been so important, to give us some sort of baseline to move from. It's not perfect, but it allows us to create that baseline and to measure from and to develop going forward.
Thank you. Maybe Reinhard or Gianluca, you want to comment also?
Yeah, I can fully agree to Dave. It's the same in Austria. The problem is that the bureaucratic system we have at the moment is split up into different departments. And in a bureaucracy, the competitor is not outside on the market, it's the other department. So they're all doing their own, they're all having their own data strategies. And now politicians, but also people in the systems, they understand that somehow they work together. And in former times, the public sector had to build roads, and they came up with electric energy, and now working with data is a new sector. They should and will invest money. So I think yes, many of the stakeholders they understand it, and it's up to us finding ways how we can implement that.
Thank you. Gianluca, how is your ecosystem working? Do you have trust in the big effort you are doing in collecting all this data for your politician to take decisions? What do you think? What is your assessment now?
First, what we are spending for collecting this data is not only used for tourism, but it is being used for a lot of areas. So it is useful for many purposes. Regarding data to politicians, I think that the key is to explain very well what are the limits and the constraints of what we are providing to the politician. So to explain that these are relative numbers, for example, or to explain what are the context, what is the context in which these data are collected. For example, look at the COVID data now, no, Giorgio? We are full of data for the COVID infections. You don't know which data are good, which are not, but it is important to be clear what these data are showing and what they are not showing. If you are clear, I think that you can improve the trust in data.
Thank you. I have a question about the chicken and egg dilemma. What should be first? Build the data hub or engage with your users to understand what they need? How do you make those two things be coherent?
Is that for me, Giorgio? I recognize that question.
Maybe if you want.
No, I'm okay for somebody else to answer it. Like all chicken and egg questions, it's both. We need to show people. We also need to understand their requirements. So it's a little bit of parallel, moving in small steps. My answer.
And you feel that your ecosystem is keen to discuss and give requirements and trusting that the results they are getting are satisfactory, right?
They are, once they have something to see. It's very difficult to have a conversation with a blank page, but once you show them something and the art of the possible, then that tends to open up, Giorgio.
Why not? Any comment?
You're there. Here I am, yeah. Well, I agree to Dave. And for the tourism industry, what I can say is, for me personally, I have to talk more to people from the tech industry, from people from data science sector and less to the tourism people.
Gianluca? Yes.
I think
Isabella.
that if you don't have... Okay, please.
Yes.
Please, Isabella.
Yes, ladies first. Isabella.
Please, sure.
No, Paolo. Hey. I was thinking, both Dave and Reinhard said, does it really make sense to talk to the tourism industry or to the businesses in the tourism industry? Because in my impression is like many other industries, they're going to sit back and wait to the pre-COVID situation or pre-COVID business to emerge again. And it's not going to be the case because people will have changed their habits. And so I was thinking, like with all of the speakers here also, how to approach this, because they might not jump onto data hubs because of this lag in industries. Like the hotel businesses would not have invented Booking.com. And the question is, does it work via like open government data to provide data to businesses who are willing to invent and to innovate and to basically explain to the businesses what they wanted? It's like the iPhone. The users would not have wished for the iPhone. They wanted more buttons.
Yeah.
You're right. Yes. Please, maybe Gianluca wanted to say something before. Gianluca?
Yeah, in Florence, before COVID, we started a board of different bodies and organizations to analyze tourism data. And we also made a public tender for associations or companies providing data useful for tourism. I think that having data in that time was very useful to engage the stakeholders and citizens associations. I think that we need to reduce meetings with citizens without having data, because if you do meetings without data, you take decisions and based on perceptions, emotions. Whereas it is we need to start providing some sort of data, quality data that can allow us to improve the way we take decisions based on data.
Dave? You're on mute. Unmute.
Sorry, busy typing answers to questions as well, Giorgio. Isabel, I guess I agree with you. Part of the challenge, and we've stopped calling our data hub a data hub anymore, and we're calling it a data cooperative of the concept, you show me yours, I'll show you mine. The whole idea being that if you give me your data, I'll give you access to the wider aggregated data set, but we'll also develop services on the top of that to allow our businesses of like type and size and scale to compare and benchmark against each other. But we'll also make the data then available to our academic partners, but also to industry partners to hopefully do the big analytical and insight work that we don't have the resource available to do.
I was quite surprised about one comment that Isabella made, of which I agree completely. Now, the reality, as you said, Isabella, is that most people are expecting, okay, lots of tourists coming back, the COVID is down, everybody is vaccinated, the world is happy, and that's it. Now we know it's not going to be like that. We don't know how, but it won't be like that. So I'm wondering if you have any plan in your cities or regions or countries like Austria to build on the data you have something about the future, which is not only evolution of graphical data and so on, but it's really modification of habits of people, modifications of ways to travel, interest of people, etc., etc., which is not easy to imagine, but is there anything you can do about it?
Maybe.
Yes, please.
One thought. Thanks, Isabella, for this direction. Maybe we should think, we all, companies, organizations, we should think what will be the core competence in the future, and we should stop and get rid of everything else and let it do somebody else.
Any other comment?
I guess from our side, what we're doing, and I've talked a little bit about the baseline, we're then looking at scenarios and predictions. In technology world, we talk about futurologists. So what is the future of travel from a tourism or from a tourist perspective, from a business perspective, but also from the wider global piece in terms of will people travel or not. We're at a bit of a disadvantage. We're on an island, so you either have to get on a plane or on a boat, which has a footprint that we need to address. But it's trying to understand that, and we've brought in a number of global leading experts in kind of regenerative tourism, as I talked about before, to help us identify and model some of those scenarios. So now we've got the baseline, we can start to predict and understand what that might have. If our flight numbers were down, what would happen? If our dwell time was down, if the demographics of our type of visitor changed, what impact does that have on our numbers and our economy? But actually, as importantly, what type of experience does our future visitor want and expect? And that's actually doing what we've always done, which is a lot of market testing and sending people out to talk to people face to face, get technology out of the way, and start to understand a little bit more about their priorities and what will encourage them to travel and what they will expect to see when they get here. For us, places like New Zealand are a huge inspiration as another island nation that has done incredibly well in controlling the pandemic, but also has a very firm view on the role of tourism in its wider economy and beyond.
Gianluca, any further comments?
I don't know, Giorgio. In Florence, we still need to recover from the shock and the change of context. I mean, few months ago, we had the huge problem of too many people in the streets. So, and we didn't know how to do with so many people flows in the streets. All the people who were discussing and criticizing the administration for the too many tourists. So we really had a shock, a budget shock, first of all, because in these years, the city was able to implement a tax reduction policy due to the incomes coming from the tourism. So this was first a very financial shock. And then we need to understand what comes up afterwards. So which types of tourism will be arriving in the city. We are also a lot working with the metropolitan area, for example, Giorgio, so promoting tourism across the countries, the hills of around Florence, in order to promote also less notorious places, no? So another option can be that one. So to try to use this period to promote original tourism paths due to new platforms, for example, such as the Feel Florence platform that I mentioned before.
Anybody else wants to comment or to ask to be part of the discussion?
Just briefly for Reinhard, to understand correctly, would rather talk to the IT providers and tech companies than to hotels. Bottom line, is this the case?
Yes.
Okay, thought so. Yeah. So rather push than pull.
Well, the ski lifts were made. Yeah, the ski lifts, which are very important for the Austrian ski industry, they were not invented by tourism people, they were invented by technology people. Most of the hotels or so, if you look back, where do they come from? They come from a surrounding of being a farmer or whatever. So if you take a longer perspective, then you see that everybody has a history from whatever surrounding, and that's definitely there is no tourism history in that case. And I think we should think about the cultures and which cultures and which mindsets will help us to be resilient and successful in the future.
Good. Okay, I believe that we are finishing. So first, let me thank very much the speakers and the participants. You were many. I counted 27, which is a fair result, I would say, for a webinar, or even a good one. I will take care of sending to each other the emails of the 3 speakers you might want to contact afterwards to further discuss with them. We will publish everything online. So Reinhard, now you will be online in a few days, and together with all the rest of the speakers, and the video recording will be online. All the handouts will be online. We will make a report of the session. Later on, we will announce probably a new webinar. I'm looking for a good subject. Honestly, I am trying to avoid having too many webinars. I'm sure you have hundreds of them. You receive every day invitation to hundreds of webinars, and you participate. I do participate too many. They are interesting, but I don't want to be in competition with those. We are looking for some special topics. I think tourism was a special topic, and I liked it. I hope you did too. And thank you, Isabella, for introducing Reinhard. And Dave, you are welcome to our community. And Gianluca, you are in our community since ever, so it's you are welcome anyway. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, enjoy your Friday and the weekend. And hopefully next time we will have a better situation across Europe. Thank you so much, and goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Ciao, ciao.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Ciao.
Ciao.